What is going on, ladies, gentlemen, listeners of the Didn't Ask podcast? Welcome back to another episode of this right here podcast, the Didn't Ask podcast. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope you had a good week. I certainly had a fun weekend. It was a very busy weekend. Not only sports, but of course it was Mother's Day, so I had to celebrate that for the mothers, the grandmothers, all them things. You know, you gotta make them feel good. They are here for you constantly, so celebrating them 1 year, technically kind of two, because of course they have a birthday as well, but celebrating them that one extra year a day is very much deserved. So I hope all the mothers out there had a great Mother's Day, and I hope you enjoyed that as well, because sometimes it can be a fun thing to celebrate your mom a little extra. Other than that, it was a very busy sports weekend. We had the first ever Grand Prix of Miami, and that was such a fun, interesting, heavy fight, I have to say. It was such a cool scene seeing Max qualify in third, because the final push that he wanted to do in qualification, his back tires gave out and he skirted around the corner a little bit, which then made him abort his run, sadly coming in third. But on the race day, he was very quick to gain his positions back very quickly. He started out as third, like I mentioned, and then immediately took out Sainz, and that was that. And then stayed in front of him, and then it only took him like 9 or 10 rounds, I believe, to get past Leclerc. And that was basically it. And that was all she wrote. At that point, it was just making sure that the tires were good and just strolling on. After that, technically it's before that, I guess. I watched UFC because, of course, UFC is the night of Saturday onto Sunday. So that was an interesting fight, I would say. We had some big names on the card. Of course, Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson was one of the fights that people were just like, why are they fighting? What is here the point? But I guess it is basically all you could do with them, because the lightweight division is very busy and everybody is very much on the highest of levels there. So we had Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson, and an amazing KO finish for Michael Chandler here, with that straight up kick straight to Tony's jaw. And man, Tony is a fan favorite. He's a warrior, but sometimes you are very scared for him, especially when he gets knocked out like this. Those are never things you want to see, and those are hits you shouldn't be taken that often, and Tony Ferguson has taken a lot of them. So yeah, I hope Tony's doing well, but congrats to Michael Chandler for getting that big of a knockout. And then, of course, afterwards calling out Conor McGregor, which is, of course, a fight that, all the fighters in the lightweight division really want that Conor McGregor fight, because it's money. Because if you're fighting Conor McGregor, you're going to get a main event and you're going to make so much fucking money. So that's why everybody calls him out. And we saw it after the main event of Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje, where Charles Oliveira won the fight, sadly didn't retain his title because he weighed in 0.5 pounds too heavy, and therefore the title was officially vacant. But to many people, he is still the champ. And he immediately called out Conor McGregor as well. And I don't think that that's a good fight for Conor to take. I think Conor should probably go either with Poirier 4, even though I don't really think that many people are waiting for that, or with Michael Chandler, because if he's going to take on Charles Oliveira, he's going to get done real quick, in my opinion. Because Charles Oliveira, I don't know what the guy is on. He is such an interesting person, where he's amazing on the ground. He has good stand-up, but he can also take a few hits where you go like, oh my god, he is out, and then, oh no, he's in fucking, they put the other guy in the guillotine and it's over. So it's really fun. Something that was a little bit less fun was the fight before, where we had Thug Rose Namajunas fighting Cookie Monster Carla Esparza. And of course, that was supposed to be like one of the headlines, especially after the fights that Rose Namajunas had in the previous rounds with Zhang Weili. That totally didn't turn out that way. It was an absolute mayhem where it just nothing happened. And even the commentary was just saying like, "Hey, I don't really know how to score this fight," because they were just basically finding each other's range or trying to get into the range. So they were just like throwing a punch and then stepping backwards, throwing a punch, stepping backwards. And in the end, it was just like, it basically got down to the fucking 2 or 3 takedown attempts or takedowns, I should say, because I believe she had like 18 takedown attempts in total, but she only landed 2 for Carla Esparza. And that was basically what won her the fight. It's absolutely crazy that, of course, it's crazy that you can lose a championship like this, but when you're constantly on your back foot, and of course, some fighters are more on their back legs, trying to move a little differently and moving backwards while attacking forwards. A couple of fighters can do that. Israel Adesanya is one of them who can go backwards but then still pressure their opponents forwards in a sense. But that was definitely not what Rose Namajunas was doing. She was basically avoiding a fight, which is super sad because she walks to the ring calling herself the best. She goes, "I'm best. I'm the best." And then you go into the ring and you're basically doing nothing. And then we have her corner, and I believe that is her husband or boyfriend or whatever. And he was saying, "Yo, the people are booing you. You're doing great. This is what we want. They want you. You know, the crowd has to boo you because then you know you're doing well." And if I personally was like, "Well, I don't think that is the talk that you wanted to give. This is not the moment right now." And then we saw going into round 4, I believe, where Trevor Whitman was seemingly getting worried about the fight, and he was just like, "Yeah, we're you gotta have to push forward. You gotta do a little bit more work, make her feel the pressure." And then even in going into round 5, Trevor Whitman was just like, "Hey, fuck the game plan, go have fun," meaning like, "Hey, just go attack out, go full out." And then she didn't do that, and then what happens? Carla Esparza won the fight by split decision, I believe. But yeah, honestly, to me, I honestly, during the fight, I was just like, yeah, I hope Carla Esparza wins, because if you're the champion, you want to show the people that you're a champion, right? You have the heart of a champion, you have the fight of a champion, and that's when you showcase what you can do. But if you're then just walking backwards constantly, standing on the near the fence of the cage, it's just like, what are you doing? This is not championship behavior. You can call yourself the best, but if you're avoiding a fight, that is in some ways good, but in many ways it's just like, why are you doing this? You're not a champion. This is not what a champion should do. This is not what a champion should fight like. So I was on that kind of, I guess a kind of pity move, but I was kind of happy that she did lose her title, to just wake her up and be like, "Hey, you are still a fighter, and if you're not fighting and you're just throwing like 2 throws or 3 throws in a round, that's not gonna win you a fight." And when you have Carla Esparza, who took the center of the octagon, pushed forward, tried to do takedowns, just being more active, she won the fight that way. And that's just the sad reality of it, really. Well, I have been talking about the sport weekend for about 10 minutes, and that's not really what I'm supposed to be doing here. I'm here to answer Reddit's most popular questions of the past week, so let's jump into the first question coming from the Ask Reddit subreddit for today, asked by user AG Studios 22, and they ask, "What makes you not want to have kids?" Currently, it's just basically society that doesn't want me to have kids. Right now, everything is fully fucked. Prices are going through the fucking roof of just groceries, but also of housing. There are too little houses. The environment is just going fucking bazonkers. And it's just not a fun time to raise a kid, I feel like. Everything is just death, doom, and gloom. Like, everything sucks, right? We have a war going on in Ukraine. We have so many people fleeing that country, going to other countries to get help, to get shelter, but other countries don't want to do that because people are, in many cases, racist or just very self-indulgent, very egotistical. So we now have hundreds and thousands of refugees that come into the Western Europe side, wanting to have housing, wanting to have a place to stay, wanting a place to call home. And we already are in a housing crisis here in the Netherlands, where we don't have houses for the people that are currently living here, so let alone the people that want to come and live here. So at this point, it's just like, well, what are we going to do? Why the fuck am I going to have a kid and put that on this planet for the whole planet to just basically go up in flames in a couple of years? It feels like it to me. It doesn't really seem that very appealing at this moment. But then again, I am not in a relationship right now, and with that, you never know what happens when you meet the one and you go like, well, hey, I met this person and they want to have kids, she wants to have kids, so let's get some kids. I don't know, maybe that switch has to be flipped over in a couple of years. Who knows? But right now, yeah, it's just like we are in a very, very bad time, I feel like. Even though they always say like things get better, and every time in society, normally we are, I mean, we are getting better in many sense of the form. But yeah, it's just a bit fucked up when the world seems to be going to shit. Where, again, we have too few houses for all our people to live in, and therefore people like me that have graduated college and are currently having a job and working and whatever still live with their parents because there are no houses, and if there is a house, it's gonna be shit fucking expensive. And then we have, again, the groceries that are getting more and more expensive thanks to inflation, and that is just not great. And that, yeah, no, putting a kid on this planet where the environment is fucked, the prices are fucked for everything, it just doesn't seem like a very smart idea at the moment. But again, anything can change, like Taylor Swift once said. It doesn't. It could be that again, when I meet the one and I see her as the person I want to be with for the rest of my life, that switch flicks over and we're gonna have kids tomorrow. But right now, I still think it's I'm gonna be a little bit more selfish and be like, hey, let me care for myself first before I have to care about a kid. So thank you, AG Studios 22, for a question. Moving on to the second question of today, coming from user Silent Agent 47, and they ask, you have 5 minutes to prepare before a guy breaks into your house with the intention to kill you. You cannot exit your house. What is your strategy to survive? Well, at that point, we're just gonna call the police. If I just go like, hey, there's a guy on the way to kill me, could you just stand by at my house for, a couple of minutes when 5 hits? Because I feel like this guy is going to kill me. I hope that the police will just show up and be like, hey, waiting in front of the door, so when he tries to fucking get in, or technically when he gets in, because of course when you try to get in, that is attempted break-in or whatever the fuck, so the punishment for that will be lower. So if the guy actually breaks into my house, he can just get fucking arrested right away. That's, I think, the best case scenario in this situation. Just call the police and then make sure that I barricade my door, just to make sure that when he tries to get in, it's going to take him a little longer to get in, and it takes a little bit more time for him to get to me, actually. But yeah, it's going to be calling the police. I'm just going to do a very snitch move and just be like, hey, dude, there's this guy, and he is waiting for me to, kill me. So please show up at my door, please. And then, yeah, I'm going to be in my room, making sure that I put my mattress in front of a window and then my bed in front of the door or something like that, to just barricade myself in a little bit more, to give myself a little bit more time to be like, hey, the police, he is inside, so please, can you come over here, please? And I have pepper spray in the house, so I might want to just get that, and maybe also like a lighter or something like that, so that I can just fucking light the motherfucker on fire with some deodorant or something like that. But yeah, going to your question, Silent Agent 47, You have 5 minutes to prepare before a guy breaks into your house with the intention to kill you. You cannot exit your house. What is your strategy to survive? First off, we're calling the police right away and be like, hey, police, there's this guy on the way to kill me. Please be here real quick because he's really trying to kill me. I will then gather a lighter or anything that can, spark something, and then have my deodorant cans and perfume, whatever, at the ready. I will barricade my door and my window just to make sure that it takes a little bit longer for him to actually get to me. And then I hope that the police will be in time there to stop him, I guess. That would be my answer to you, Silent Agent 47. Thank you for your question. I love your games. Moving on to the third question of today. This one coming from user LeJerk. Very funny. With what fictional character would you have a drink? I saw this question, and the first person that jumped to mind was Poison Ivy from the Harley Quinn show. And I don't know why. I mean, of course, she's very sexy. She is in a relationship with Harley Quinn, which is also very cool at the very end. Harley Quinn would be a very interesting person, but I would be a little bit more afraid of the situation, so I would probably just skip that, maybe. So yeah, when I think about this, I would probably say Poison Ivy from Harley Quinn. But then I look into the comments and then it says, is that duck on fire? The user says, Uncle Eero, but no alcohol, only tea. And it says have a drink, and of course in America saying have a drink would be alcohol adjacent most of the time. So yeah, it that is an interesting thing we can do. I don't drink to begin with, so we're not gonna get drinks for me in that sense of the word. But yeah, I think Uncle Eero would be a very fun person to have a cup of tea with, and he of course has so many stories to tell. So I think that is also a really fun aspect of the situation here. While thinking of the Avatar world, I would also say Korra. I think Korra is such a fun personality to have around and just talk to. Just knowing what she has done and the thing that she is currently working on and stuff like that, I think that is super fun to talk about. So yeah, going back to your question asked by user LeJerk, of course, coming from Leclerc from the Formula One. With what fictional character would you have a drink? And again, I would probably say it's probably going to be Poison Ivy from Harley Quinn, because I think that she is a very fun personality and I think that she has some fun stories to tell. Moving on to the fourth question of today, coming from user Wild-Runner, and they ask, what is the name you shouldn't name your child today? I think the easiest answer here would just be Isis, because that is a name that has been used throughout history, of course, because it's a Egyptian goddess. So a lot of people would call their kids Isis, or not a lot of people, but some people would probably call their kid Isis. And I've heard of people that are called Isis. And then, of course, the ISIS thing started going on in the Middle East and stuff like that. And that, not that great. So I would probably say Isis, bit fucked right now. Then I would probably say, we of course have connotations with things. We think about certain people with certain names. And then with that, I would probably not name my kid Jake anymore. I really love the name Jake. When you're in high school and you're thinking about kids and it's like, oh, what would I name my kid? Yada, yada, yada. And then I came out to Jake because I really like that name. But then Jake Paul happened and I'm just like, well, never mind. I'm not going to do that. So yeah, that to me, those were the two names that jumped to mind immediately. So Wild-Runner, what is a name you shouldn't name your kid today? And I would probably say ISIS is the number one for me, just because of course, the thing that's happening in Syria and Iraq and stuff like that. And Iran, I should say. And for the other, for me, would be Jake, just because Jake Paul fucked it up real bad for everybody that's called Jake. So thank you for your question. And now, moving on to the final question of the Ask Reddit subreddit for today, coming from SpongeBob. And it's SPONDGBOB. And they ask, if someone offered you $50,000 to buy your pet, how would you respond? To me, this is a very interesting question. because it's really questioning your morals as a human being. Because I have two cats and I love them dearly, and I wouldn't send them away for anything really. But then you're putting 50,000 bucks on their heads, and I'm just thinking like, hey, my cats are pretty old as of right now, so maybe we can just sell them off. Maybe I'm thinking about it, but I don't really want to say yes because that would be very insensitive. And I've cared for these cats since they were like a couple of weeks old, so. Uh, but yeah, overall, I think that I'm gonna just say no and just say like, hey, no, thanks for your offer, but my cats are mine and I really love them, so I really would like to keep them with me as close as I can. Right now, there is a cleaning fucking thing going through my fucking street, and it's making a whole bunch of fucking noise. So I just gonna keep talking, and hopefully it's not that bad in the edit afterwards. I can hear it move slowly and slowly, so I'm just gonna keep talking until it's really gone, and you don't really hear it in the background of this fucking podcast anymore. So yeah, going back to your question, SpongeBob, if someone offered you $50,000 to buy your pet, how would you respond? Personally, I think that I would somewhat think about it when I would like see the money and be like, "Oh my god, that's a whole bunch of money for my very old cats." But in the end, I will definitely decline because I'd rather be here till their death than sell them off and just pawn them off somewhere. That's just not me, man. That's not me. Act like a waste man. That's not me. Sex and ego, that's not me. So yeah, thank you for your question, SpongeBob. And now moving on to the final question of today, of course, coming from the Am I the Asshole subreddit from user Fred Walker 37, and they ask, am I the asshole for canceling Mother's Day celebration that I arranged for my wife after hearing what she told my son? I, a 37-year-old male, have a 13-year-old son. I was a widower when I met my now wife. She has a 16-year-old daughter from another relationship. The family is often on pretty good terms. My son is the quiet one in the house. He keeps to himself a lot, but not to the point of being concerning. My wife and stepdaughter are the complete opposite. They both encourage him to be outgoing and share activities and join gatherings with extended family. My son complained about having to be forced out of his comfort zone and having his need for space invalidated. I spoke to both my wife and a stepdaughter and asked them to give him space and freedom to spend his time however he wanted. They apologized and promised to let him be. As Mother's Day was approaching, I wanted to throw my wife a surprise Mother's Day celebration. It was no longer a surprise because my stepdaughter gave her the heads up so she could prepare. Yesterday, I got off work earlier than usual to get final arrangements done. We planned to celebrate at the restaurant and invited her family there. I had the key, and while I was entering the house through the front door, I overheard my wife and stepdaughter talking to my son. My wife was asking my son if he could convince me to let him stay home and not go with them to the restaurant to celebrate. I paused and decided to keep listening. My son said, "Why?" and she told him that his introverted and socially inept attitude will make her family uncomfortable and will ruin the mood. He promised her that he'd be well behaved, interact and socialize with everyone, but she said that she wasn't buying it. He kept reassuring her, but she snapped and told him that technically she's not his mom, so she didn't get why he wanted to celebrate Mother's Day with her so badly. My stepdaughter threw some, I don't remember, backhanded comment, and then both of them were shocked to see me standing there. Both were staring without saying anything. I told my son and his stepsister to go to their rooms and told my wife that the celebration was off, cancelled. She tried to argue, asking why repeatedly, and I told her why. She tried to explain that she didn't mean it like that and that I only heard part of the conversation, but not all of it. I told her I was done arguing and the decision was already made. She yelled, asking what she was going to tell her family, and said I was making tremendous mistake towards her. I ignored her whilst she kept throwing a tantrum after tantrum. Early this morning, she took my stepdaughter and went to stay with her folks. Not a single call or text from her so far. The situation is full of tension. I'm still upset and more hurt, to be honest. I mean, yes, I did say I was going to have this celebration, but I thought that what she was said to my son was too harsh to ignore. Am I the asshole? Who? Fred Walker, 37. You're clearly not the asshole. You have talked to your wife and your stepdaughter to be like, hey, he is a little bit different than you guys, so please keep that in mind with the approach. And now he's actually saying, the son is actually saying like, hey, I want to go with you to the restaurant, and I want to celebrate this day with you guys. And then you're taking that away from him? For what? What's the real reason behind this? There is no real reason for you to just be like, hey, you're gonna misbehave, and by misbehave, he's gonna be quiet. There is a very much a difference here in the situation where it's not that the kid is throwing tantrums and yelling and crying, whatever the fuck, in the restaurant. He's actually the opposite. He's just there to just be there, honestly, even if he said that he's gonna socialize, that's fine. Of course, that's good, actually. But like, him just wanting to go I don't really understand how that impacts the mother or the stepdaughter in this situation. So why the fuck are we making such a big fuss about this and forcing him to stay home while he just wanted to be there? I don't really understand why we're making that a big fuss about it. So I fully understand that the dad is just saying like, hey, you're doing this for no real reason, and you're forcing this on to my son, so no, we're not gonna have this Mother's Day dinner because you fucked it. So yeah, I can make this a long story, but let's just keep it long story short. Fred Walker 37 asks, am I the asshole for canceling Mother's Day celebration that I arranged for my wife after hearing what she told my son? Definitely not. You tried to be a fun husband and make this day for her, inviting family for a nice dinner. Your son really wanted to be there, even though he is more of an introverted character. But to be really harsh to the kid and say like, hey, you have to stay home because you're an introvert and my family doesn't like that or whatever, that's just fucked up. Especially after he said like, hey, I'm just going to be there to socialize. Maybe not as much as you guys, but he's going to be there to have fun. And you're basically taking that away. So yeah, I am very much with you, Fred Walker, that you're not the asshole and your wife definitely is. And that's going to be it for the Didn't Ask podcast for this week. I hope you had a good time. If you did, please leave a rating on Apple Podcast or on Spotify, because both places have the ability for you to rate them. If you do, I might read your comment in the next fucking episode of this right here podcast. You can find this podcast on anchor.fm/didn't-ask-pod. Over here, you have all the hyperlinks to your favorite podcast services like Podcast Addict, like Pocket Cast, like Amazon Podcast, like Apple, you name it, it's there. We're basically on every podcast platform right now, so that's really nice. You can find it there. Over there, you can also find a button that says message, and if you press that button, you get the ability to record a voice memo for me so I can answer your question live on air. If you don't want your voice to be heard on this right here podcast, please say that up front or at the end of your message, because then I'll just read the question out myself and then I can answer it still. That's gonna be it for me for this week. I will be back next week, and if you want to know what I'm doing in the meantime, you can go to trek.tv. That link will be in the show description, as well as the other links that I've mentioned beforehand. Over here, you can see all the TV shows and movies that I'm watching as I'm watching it. I've been watching Jurassic Park movies and going into Jurassic World right now. I've been watching Disney movies and Disney shows on Disney Plus, and I've been having a great time. So yes, this is gonna be all for me for this week. I hope to see you back next week. Take good care of yourself. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.